All right, we can have your attention. Welcome everyone. It's great to see so many of you here today. And it's kind of like Dr. Schurle's class is packed full, so that's kind of what we were expecting. But I'm Don Boggs, Associate Dean for the College of Ag, and Dr. Featherstone asked if I'd be willing to do this. I said, yeah, that'd be great. I'd be happy to do that. And I started kind of thinking about what I was going to say, and man, I don't want to make it sound like a eulogy. But I do mourn a little bit every time one of my great teachers here in the college does retire and such. But I really appreciate the Ag Econ department doing this with your retiring faculty. I think it's just a fantastic opportunity for them to share with students and younger faculty and some of us old folks as well. And so, Bryan, we appreciate you doing this. So I'm going to give you a little bit of those kind of things, though. Bryan Schurle, born March 14th, 1990, in Sutter, Kansas. Went to Emporia State University, where he was majored in mathematics, minors in physics and computer science. So from there he went to The Ohio State University, got a master's in computer and information sciences. Finally got to where he needed to be, working in agricultural economics, and got his PhD there in June 1977. His field of study there was farm management and production economics, economic theory, and quantitative and stat methods. Luckily, he came straight to Kansas State, and that's the good news, and he's been here ever since. That's right, you can clap whenever you want. That's good. So and I agree on the title of the deal. So he's been with us, various roles here in the department. Was named in 1998 a University Distinguished Teaching Scholar and Professor, and I'm not sure how you describe you any better than that. Distinguished Teaching Scholar. I really like that. Served a couple years as a department head here and helped us through some really rough times. Has taught all kinds of courses here. The one I first knew of you on was Ag Econ 120, and that was the one that got our kids up and running and really fired them up here. And my first exposure was one of the students talking about, I got this crazy professor who's got this Nerf gun, he shoots him twice. So that was my first exposure to Bryan Schurle. And so Sam Brownback would have been here, but he thought you might shoot him. So. Taught ag finance, taught all kinds of stuff in the MAB program as well. Advised students, grad students, and usually 25 to 30 undergrads, and just did a superior job all the time. Lots of mine. If I read all the awards we'd be here, you wouldn't get a talk. So just hit on a few. A lot of them as undergrads. I mean, this guy was in Blue Key. These are the ones that got me. He was in the honorary math fraternity. Not a lot of us in the College of Ag can say that. He was in the honorary physics fraternity. Was the president of that one. Got the highest grades on the football team and was a varsity letterman for 3 years down there. I heard from Ohio State that they tried to get you your senior year for football. I didn't know if that was true or not. But at K-State, numerous awards and such. Just want to highlight a few. 3 different awards from NACTA, including the Ensminger Award, which goes to the outstanding teacher in the country. Honorary state FFA degree. He got the Golden Quill Award for his research article on the farm manager and real appraisers. Presidential Distinguished Teaching Award, the USDA National Teaching Award, which is, that's a gold star there. The 2000 Carnegie Foundation Award for a case teacher, Kansas Professor of the Year, the Ag Advisor of the Year, and the one that probably most special to me, and hopefully you too, is the Dave Mugler Distinguished Teaching Award. Dr. Mugler always said they don't care what you know till they know that you care, and if that doesn't define Dr. Bryan Schurle, I don't know what does. So, Dr. Schurle, thank you for your many, many years of service. We look forward to your last lecture.
Thank you all for coming. It's quite a group of people. I see from a bunch of different relatives and all kinds of things, former students, current students, past, all kinds of people here. And so thank you for coming. I hope you came to celebrate with me, because this is kind of a celebration for me. When you're young, it seems like you get in a routine of graduating. You graduate from grade school, you graduate from high school, you graduate from college, you get a degree and you graduate, and then you start a job. It took me 40 years minus 1 month to graduate from this last one. So it's kind of a celebration for me, and so I appreciate you all coming here. The closest that I can come to thinking of something that illustrates, the celebration and the fun, I feel like I finally made it here. And if you saw the Never-Ending Story, anybody see the Never-Ending Story? Yeah, the Never-Ending Story. The hero has to get by these sphinx that are frying people with their lasers, and this little old guy is watching from the mountaintop, watching the hero if he can get by the Sphinx, and it's really tense, and he's stepping over bones and skulls and stuff, and he gets past the Sphinx, and the little man runs back down the hill to his wife yelling, "He made it! He made it!" And so I was going to play that, but it's real crappy on the screen. So anyway, I feel like I made it. So what I wanted to do today was review a little bit part of my career, maybe tell you some secrets that I haven't been allowed to say in my whole career. Show you some things like I would do in the undergraduate classroom. I brought my bag here. Remember my bag? Yeah. I bring my bag quite often with things in it. I have a couple demonstrations. There are 3 or so, and then tell you why it's time for me to retire. So anyway, Don reviewed a little bit about this, but I started out kind of in the mathematical sciences, and I switched to Ag Econ. One thing that was an interesting part of my career, I started out in a PhD program. I took the PhD prelim at Ohio State. Ohio State was trying to ratchet up the quality of their program. They wanted to get in the top 5 in the country, so they were really getting more rigorous. After 4 econ courses, I was the only one of 7 that passed the thing. All right. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. The reason I passed it was because I'd had 50 hours of mathematics, and there was a differential equation question in the macro part. I still didn't know anything about economics. It's a little hard to take an economics job and admit that, but that's really true. I had to learn economics on the job. And so I've never had a principles course, the one that I taught for probably 50 times. Neither micro or macro. It was my second teaching assignment. So I had to learn economics on the job some way, and so I read the Wall Street Journal religiously. How do markets work? Look for examples. Try to learn what economics means to people. I remember asking in one of my PhD courses what all that math meant, and the guy looked at me, didn't say anything, turned back to the board and started deriving some more. He didn't try to tell me what any of it meant. And so probably I wasn't indoctrinated into markets and how they worked. Maybe I wasn't a true believer, but I couldn't tell. The people that hired me, I should thank them because they took a real risk hiring somebody into an economics program who didn't know any economics. And so anyway, in my teaching career then, I really worked hard to try to understand it myself so I could teach it, and I had to start from scratch. One of the early evaluations I got was that Dr. Schurle never taught anything that he did not understand himself, and that made me, that felt good. I felt that student knew what he was talking about. Maybe, I don't know. But I like learning economics from students. I like teaching in the MAB program in particular, or Masters of Agribusiness, because those students have been out for a while. And they come back into the program, and then you can kind of learn how their business works, and you can learn a lot from them. But I also learned that students don't always act the way economics said they do, or said the way they should act, and that lots of them just didn't understand it. So I worked harder. I thought, well, maybe I can get them to understand it better. So I worked harder to found more examples. I brought my bag to class more often, did all kinds of stuff, and I got more and more comments. Dr. Schurle, I don't think it's your fault, I just don't get it. And so there's something about this here that isn't matching up very well with certainly the way students think. In economics, we assume people are rational, And really, if you think about it, if people are rational, then they should be able to figure this all out by themselves. All right? So I could call off class at the beginning of class and just say, "You're all rational, you'll figure it out." Well, you know, as it turns out, just so many of them couldn't get it, I couldn't even teach them how to think rationally. Even though I worked, you know, all semester long. So the bottom line is, there's something missing about this picture, assuming that people are rational. And so, you know, if you look at using economics to explain people's spending and saving, people make some bad decisions in that area. I mean, it's a problem. If you look at voting records, people don't vote in their self-interest, and you wonder what in the world is going on. If you look at advertising programs, they typically leave out price. Now, for you economists, leaving out price, what does that tell you? You know, if you want to summarize all economics in one word, it's not supply and demand, that's a couple words. It's price. I mean, price is the thing. And advertising, outside of a Burger King and a couple others, leave price out. They don't ever tell you what things cost. All right? Wall Street Journal articles, some of them, you know, follow the standard way that economics works, but some of them also, they say things like supply increases and then the price increases. Well, you all should know enough about this, thinking about it very long. If supply increases, the price is supposed to do what? It's supposed to go down. All right. Well, then they'd go in and they'd explain, well, yeah, supply was going to increase, but it really wasn't going to increase as much as the industry experts had expected it to increase. And so the increase was really a smaller increase than they'd expected, and so they'd expected this great big one, and so because of that great big one, that one had already been building the price. So price was too low, and so here we got a small increase, and so, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, really? You suppose they really, you know, surveyed everybody to see whether they really overestimate, you know, whatever. And so, you know, sometimes you look at that and you say, well, you know, maybe they're trying to explain things that are really just variability and, you know, white noise, just volatility that will happen in any kind of a system. Maybe they're just trying to explain that with using economics kind of deal. Then when it comes to research, now you've got to remember how old I am here. I just missed having to invert the x prime x matrix by hand. Okay? And if you had to do that very often, you spent a long time and you didn't estimate more than maybe one model. Well, you know, now we estimate a lot of models so you can find one that fits kind of thing. And we pick functional forms that dictate the results. You know, if you pick the right functional form, it kind of makes you have the kind of results that you want. And then this last one here, this one kind of happened over my career where people started cleaning the data. Oh man, that makes me real nervous. You know, some of these techniques that we use in research are pretty sensitive, and if you clean the right ones, pretty soon you can get the results you want. And so you kind of wonder, you know, is this really working very well to fit? All right, and so I've got a demonstration here. I'd like to have 3 volunteers if I could. Okay, all right. Okay, now, Ewan, thanks for coming down here to help. Okay, now you see this? See this piece right here? Circle, and there's a square hole. Does that fit?
No.
No, it doesn't fit, does it? Okay. Your great-great-grandpa used to say there were 2 methods you could use if something wasn't working or wasn't fitting very well. One is you could put a little oil in it or a little WD-40. Or the other is you could get a hammer or get a bigger hammer and make it fit. Yeah. Which do you think would work better here?
Hammer.
I think a hammer. So let's see here. Who would like to be first? All right. See it? Yeah, well, just put it on there and give it a whack. Yeah, did it work? No, it didn't work. Okay.
Like this.
Should we try a bigger hammer?
Yeah.
Fine, let's try a bigger hammer.
Whoa. It's heavy.
Okay.
Go, hit it.
Oh, that, whoa, almost.
It did.
It made it in, okay, all right. You're getting closer.
Can I try?
What else should we do? Maybe,
Can I do it? Give it a huge whack.
man, you almost had it.
Shift it.
We didn't, well, that's all right. Maybe we'll just quit and save the desk here. You think you could get it to fit?
No.
Probably if you just get a big enough hammer.
That's scary.
Okay, so you can sit down now again. Thank you very much for helping me out here. So anyway, using economics to explain things felt a lot, honestly, to me, like using a bigger and bigger hammer to try to make this thing work. All right. So, along came behavioral economics. All right. Behavioral economics does not assume we're rational. It does experiments to see how people really do make decisions. It doesn't assume they're rational. It looks and sees, and it does repeatable experiments to see how people make decisions. It's aided by neuroscience and fMRI studies. fMRI studies are pictures of the brain and parts of it that are operating when people are making certain kinds of decisions. All right? And that's kind of proof that you're using this part of your brain by the activity in that part of the brain. And it results in a decision-making framework that involves two processes, the automatic system and the control system. And this is supported by all kinds of things, but the piece that I like the most about it is the fact that they're measuring brain activities and seeing what parts of the brain people are using for different kinds of decisions. All right? So the two systems, as this kind of developed in the literature, I started teaching this in class. The automatic system, that system was designed for physical survival. It's similar to what animals have as far as their brains. It operates continually, it operates automatically, it's operating all the time. You can think of it as a parallel processor. What it's doing for you right now is it's smelling to see if anything smells dangerous. It's looking around at people to see if anybody looks dangerous. It's listening for signs of danger. It's feeling for something. It's interested in fighting and fleeing, and the things that the animals are kind of interested in. It operates very fast. When employers come in to interview our students, they say that they make an impression in 15 seconds of that student. Decide, well, that's this system operating. All right. We use this system all the time, and this last piece of it here is really important. It doesn't need all the information that you would need to really analyze something in order to make a decision. In other words, it can make a decision without having all the information it needs. Now at first, does that sound good, or does that sound a little scary? Something that can make decisions without all the information it needs. Well, that's how that system works, all right? So that's particularly important in a risk management class where you don't have all the information that you need to make a decision. But anyway, the control system then. The control system is logical, deliberate, it's slow, it needs information for analysis. It takes attention and effort. It takes a lot of oxygen to your brain in order to do this. And so, I present this to students, all right? When a student has they're taking a multiple choice test and they kind of think B might be the right answer for some reason, that's that automatic system, maybe remembering something, and you a lot of times you don't want to second guess that automatic system because it might, if you go back and change it, you probably blew it. Because that system works pretty well for some really important kinds of things. All right. Some research results that talk about on the left-hand side. The left-hand side describes the automatic system. It's short-term, it's impulsive, it wants stuff now. It's a doer, it gets stuff done and it does it right now. Passions, emotions, the hot state, road rage, people that are angry and then retaliate, people that are stressed and make decisions quickly. That's the automatic system. On the right-hand side is the control system. It's long-term, it's patient, it's a planner. Planning is really important for us over a lifetime. If you use it, impartial spectator, it's deliberative. It operates in a cold state. Many of your mothers told you count to 10 before you respond. That's to get you to move from this side where you're going to say something you're going to regret forever to the other side where you've thought through it and been a little bit more careful about what you would say. All right? Now, while the last few years I've been teaching, I also spent a lot of time taking care of my mother. She passed away last spring at age 96, but as she aged, she spent more and more time talking about how life has changed over her lifetime, and it has changed phenomenally over her lifetime and over my lifetime, all right? And so we don't have to go back too far. I've got XXX years here where you would have to go back to where the issue was keeping from starving, keeping from freezing, keeping from getting eaten by tigers or whatever kind of deal. That XXX there, that is, we talk about that in class. How far back was it where physical survival was the kind of the important thing that people were concerned about? When hurricanes come, it shifts back to the physical survival kind of thing. But for most of us, we're in the economic survival situation where really what we're interested in is making enough money so we can buy from Walmart enough stuff to keep us from starving, freezing, and being eaten, kind of thing. So, for most of us, we're in the mode of trying to make enough money to stay away from starving, freezing, and getting eaten. In principles classes here at K-State, students coming out of agriculture, that XXX there is about 80 years. Where it goes back to is about the Depression. All right, and so the Depression was when people were, they were worried about starving, freezing at that time because times were really bad. My dad never gave me any information on economic survival, but this was really strange and I've puzzled over a long time. I got 3 lessons from my dad on hunting rabbits. It was the kind of lesson that you would have thought might have been the birds and the bees lesson, or something serious kind of thing. But it was real serious. Well, what was the deal there? Well, as a kid, he was hungry if he didn't bring home a rabbit. All right, he spent some time. There were 10 kids in the family. They had 3 gardens. They had chickens for eggs and meat. They had cows for milk and meat. They had pigs for meat. They took wheat to the grinding mill up in Winkler, if their ox would find it, and it would come back with flour. And so physical survival back then was the big issue. Now, everything has kind of shifted over to where economic survival. We got, for most of us, the issue is making enough money. All right? The automatic system that we all have was designed for that physical survival. It encourages us to do the kind of things that would help us physically survive, but it's not very good at making decisions for economic survival. It allows us to make really bad decisions in some cases, and we'll give you some examples down the road here a little bit. But the problem is we're kind of stuck with that automatic system. It was really designed for something different years ago. Students in ag, they like to feel physically productive. The issue now is not whether you're physically productive. The issue now is whether you can make money producing stuff. And so they've got to shift between those two kind of ways of thinking about things. All right. David Brooks, who writes for the New York Times, wrote an editorial, and he described the places she should have been over the last 50 years where the most important things in the world were happening. And that included, that list of things included things like being where the Berlin Wall was taken down, and being where people were figuring out this about our decision-making abilities here. In the early 2000s, there was an explosion of work in this area, looking at how people make decisions. All right. So this behavioral economics stuff has exploded. We've got behavioral finance. We've got issues in food choices. We've got issues whether you're a doctor or whatever it is. Everybody that's making decisions has to learn more about how they make decisions and think about some of the biases and the tendencies that they have. Some people have said there are as many as 200 biases that they've discovered, giving people tests and checking with experiments. Some of that may be double counting, so I'm not sure that that's quite right. But behind behavioral economics, the great hope is that if we understand some ways that we make mistakes, maybe we can do better by avoiding those situations, by positioning ourselves to make better decisions when we get in certain kind of situations. There are some, we won't spend time with them, but there are a bunch of them that are really interesting kind of things. So, I could use 3 volunteers again. Now this didn't work very well, did it?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
It didn't work well at all.
Here's one for you, and one for you. Okay.
I put it in.
Oh yeah. Well, why don't you try that one? All right. So there you go. Why don't you try some Play-Doh here? See if you can fit. There you go. See if you can fit some in there, in that hole.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can.
There you go. See if you can fit some.
You got red. I got green. All of it. So see if you can fit all of it.
Yeah, see if you can fit it. Use it all. Yeah, there you go.
Use it all. Use it all. I'm trying. You're failing.
Alright, you're doing great.
You're failing.
Okay, can I hold yours up? Alright, look at this one. Well, it's already, look at that. Look at that, it's a perfect fit. Alright, let's see. How's that one coming?
I can fit. I wasn't done. I can fit all of this.
Yeah, stick it right all in there.
Easy. Give us time.
Alright, look at, there we go. Okay. You want to show it to people? Okay, you almost ready?
My turn.
Okay, show it. There we go. Look at that. How about the green one?
Ready, I guess?
Okay. Can you hold it up? See?
Let's grab it, I guess. I can.
There you go. All right. Put those down now. Thank you very much. All right. How well does behavioral economics behave as far as explaining behavior? This kind of illustrates how I feel. It fits. It explains all kinds of things. It explains voting behavior. It explains. Thank you. You can go sit down. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I can bring my seat.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. There we go. Thank you. All right. So anyway, unlike needing a great big hammer, this stuff fits. All right. So what implications are there for the undergraduate teaching program? Well, here's an article that my daughter and son-in-law were the first, second authors on there. But let's talk about the undergraduate curriculum in Ag-Econ. Maybe what we ought to do is shift to a decision-making framework, and a couple things. One is, don't leave the psychology out. Keep the psychology in, because that's where this stuff is coming from. You know, what about a decision-making option in the department? We've got an agribusiness option, we've got a bunch of different options. Maybe a decision-making option would capture some of this kind of thing. I've asked students in class, do you know of any bad decisions that have been made? When you do that, you just get a roar of, you know, and a Twitter and stuff. I've had students write on a piece of paper, write down a bad decision that you know of and turn it in. All right, I've collected that information. One of the first times I did it, I had trouble sleeping that night. You should see some of the things that people do out there. All right, I mean, we're talking dangerous stuff. You know, when kids are little, they do little things. When kids are this age, they do big things. I mean, you know, I had to tell them the next time I saw him in class, I said, man, you know, I'm having trouble sleeping knowing this is what you're all doing out there. It was things like driving down the wrong way on the interstate. Oh, you know, lots of jumping off of things. Jumping off of high things. You know, and lots of drinking and doing things. And anyway, you know, to try to convince them that they're rational, they go, where is that person coming from? But if you ask, do you make bad decisions? Oh, they know what you're talking about there. Then ask them, would you like to make better decisions? And you get universal buy-in. Yeah, they know there's some problems out there making decisions. All right? So a better way of teaching economics might be to think of economics as a better way of thinking about things and use economics to make better decisions. Now, students just at some fundamental level, they just don't think the way economists think they think. And I could use 3 volunteers again. All right.
This one's Data Square.
Okay.
Yes, Data Square.
We'll just put all this now. We'll put this all away now, but when you come to Grandpa's house, what's one of the things you want to do?
Jump on the trampoline.
Jump on the trampoline. Anything you'd like to do down the basement?
Go to the hideout where you get candy.
Go to the hideout where you get candy. What kind of candy do you get in the hideout?
Snickers.
Snickers.
I saw that in there, you know. Yeah. I saw Snickers.
Now, don't eat it. Just smell it. Does a Snickers smell good? Don't eat it. Just smell it. Just smell it. Okay, now. Opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the opportunity that you lose because you use a resource some way. All right? And so when you think about opportunity costs, you think about other ways to use your money, you think about other ways to use your time, you know, etc. Okay, now, would you girls like to think about eating an orange slice?
No.
You know, you don't want to think about it.
No.
Okay. Would you like to think about eating an apple slice?
Yes. Yes. No.
Would you like to think about eating part of a banana?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's okay. Mostly, what would you really like to do?
Snickers.
Yeah, eat a Snickers. All right. I learned from a student a bunch of years ago that people can't think about opportunity costs because they don't like to think about alternatives. When they smell a Snicker bar, what would you like? A Snicker bar. And when do you want to eat it?
Right now.
Right now. All right. I had a student who wanted a new big pickup. And I said, did you consider a used pickup and then use some of that money for this or that unit? He wanted a new big pickup. I said, did you think about a small pickup and then use some of that money for other ways? And his response was, no, I want a new big pickup. I said, did you think about buying a car? You know, a little economy car. And then you'd have all of this money that you could use some other way. And his response was, I want a new big pickup. All right. When our automatic systems want a Snicker bar, they want what? A Snicker bar, and when do they want it? Right now. All right, and so a concept as simple as opportunity cost is hard for students because they don't like to think about what? They don't like to think about alternatives when they've got a Snicker bar in front. Thank you, girls. You can sit down and you can eat the Snicker bar. Now, when it comes to research, first modeling efforts in my research were to develop a model that predicted behavior better than profit maximization models, and so we incorporated risk and risk preferences into that work. And then I spent years in my early career going to meetings where expected utility theory was criticized, and then we went right on using expected utility theory. One of my last meetings, professional meetings, there was an expert researcher who was discussing how he incorporated behavioral economics into his research, and his conclusion was that he included behavioral economics when it was convenient, otherwise he just ignored it. And I thought, really? You know, taxpayer dollars are going for this. So anyway, somebody else is going to have to figure out how to incorporate behavioral economics, but risk research really opened the door to people having other things that influence their decision making other than just profits. And they introduced the idea that risk preferences make a difference in the decisions that you make. Well, if risk preferences make a difference, why doesn't tax avoidance? People hate taxes. Farmers hate taxes. They do all kinds of things to avoid taxes. Competition at auctions, desire to keep your family farming, satisficing behavior. That means you just have enough and that you don't want to go ahead and... So there's all kinds of possibilities out there. In a way, economics has already opened the door to look at some of those things. All right. In behavioral economics, it provides insight into how people make decisions. Beliefs come first, and then people find support for their beliefs. All right. And so the people that love Trump, they find reasons to love Trump. The people that hate Trump find reasons to hate Trump. And I don't know that they'll ever get together or be able to talk to each other, but it happens this way in lots of things. Beliefs come first, and then people look around to find support for their beliefs. In fact, most of the time, people use the control system to just rationalize after the fact. And so the automatic system that's running around out there, in some cases making bad decisions, control system afterwards comes in and says, tries to come up with kind of, haven't you heard somebody come up with some rational arguments for why they did some crazy thing? And you go, really? Well, that's the control system trying to cover up from making some real screwed up decisions. Anyway, finally, people, they don't learn much from, they learn from stories. Statistics, graphs, theories aren't as helpful as stories as a way of teaching people. So the benefits of behavioral economics provides a framework that fits the behavior better than conventional economics. It fits lots of things, explains things around us, explains political decisions, explains advertising. Advertising is almost all entirely oriented toward the automatic system, trying to get some emotional response from us. And the politicians that can get an emotional response, however, they're the ones that tend to get votes also. So finally, reasons I'm retiring. I still care about students and teaching, but caring comes with a huge cost. And my family will tell you about it. When I graded papers, it was so excruciating. How could I do such a crappy job? There are students that tied with coins on multiple choice tests. And I go, how could I be such a failure? All right? And so caring comes with a huge cost. I think if you don't care, you'll probably do a crummy job. But the cost that comes along with it, that's just too painful for me anymore. Second, I'm comfortable with the current level of ignorance. I've gotten more and more ignorant over time. Behavioral economics fits well enough to explain things, and so I'm not driven to try to figure it out anymore. Some of this stuff might be oversimplified. I know that there are more sophisticated analysis and more specific parts of the brain that do things, and so this is probably a little oversimplified, but it works so well to explain things. It's good enough. Good enough for me. All right. And finally, I'm running out of energy that it takes to engage students. When I started out teaching, I tried to, over a 50-minute period, if you could break things into about 17-minute sections, there'd be 3 of them, and then you kind of get students' interest back every 17 minutes, and so there'd be kind of 3. And then I went to, you really needed to do that 4 times a class, you know, down to about 12-minute segments, and that's 4 of them. And then recently, it'd just better be pretty darn interesting the whole time. They forget keeping their attention very long, and it's pretty hard to teach very much if you're keeping people's interests all the time. So I think it's just time for somebody else to try it instead of me. And so if anybody has any questions or comments, there's my email address. I don't look at my office account anymore. There's mostly information about shutoffs. And so if you want to email me, that's fine. And then I would like to thank my family, Brenda, who's put up with me. She'll vouch that I'm a horrible grouch every time I have to grade. And Andrew and Jenny, I've learned a lot from all of my kids, but you know, Andrew's part of the reason that I thought about this too down the road. He said, you know, for a while there he said, I've got a job that shouldn't exist. I'm thinking, maybe economics isn't working right. He learned his economics really well, kind of thing. Here's Ellen. Erica is his fiance. They're getting married in January. She'll be flying in tonight. And then Amanda and Jared, they're my co-authors. They're the neuropsych people that can answer all your questions about that. And there are 3 kids that were the star of the show today, so thank them all for coming. So, thank you all for coming. There are cookies for you. I'm done.
Okay, folks, how about you? I learned a lot today. Bryan, and one more time, we just want to say thank you from the College of Ag and Department of Ag. Enjoy the cookies. Except if you didn't get, if you got a Snickers bar, you don't get cookies. You get the first one.